Hi, everybody. I'm Tom Hafer, the host of the Parish Podcast, and welcome to this edition. The Parish Podcast is available in audio-only form on Spotify, iTunes, and wherever you find podcasts. Hi again, everyone. Welcome to the Parish Podcast, a production of the Communications and Media Department here at the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury. Today, we are very pleased to have Robyn Stiles with our consulting firm of Emergent Method with us to discuss the findings of our recent 2023 citizen survey. Welcome, Robyn.
Thank you. So glad to be with you today.
So let's first of all get right to the heart of the matter and talk about the single most important finding that came out of the citizen survey.
Oh, well, that is a big one. I see that we're really starting from the top and maybe the meatiest, pun intended, of the responses of this survey. So overwhelmingly, what I am pleased to report is that we have found that citizens across the parish, but in particular those in Sulphur, have reported a very, very high concentration of Mexican restaurants in the parish, and they would actually like to see a little bit more diversification in the types of cuisine available to them.
I love how you said that. That was great. Don't forget, they also mentioned donut shops. There are too many of those as well.
Yes.
Within the citizen survey, you pulled out a quote that I really liked that kind of says the the heart of what we're trying to get there. Give us that quote as about I love my city.
Absolutely, and this is one that really stuck out to me. So before I even get into that quote, I would like to just thank every single person that took the time to complete the survey. The fact that I am pulling out this quote of so many other really meaningful thoughts, comments, concerns, recommendations that were pulled out really speaks to the love that folks have for this parish and the fact that they were able to take this time and willing to give this feedback. But the quote that stood out to me was this one: "I love my city and state and would recommend anyone to move here, but we need so much growth. We are seeing some changes, but not a lot. We need to have more to do to keep our people here." And really, I thought that was a really great summary of so many of the concerns, so many of the comments that we received from folks from across the parish as they think about Calcasieu, as they think about why they're here, and they also look to the future.
Let's talk about how we conducted the survey and then what we're going to do with the results.
Absolutely. So this survey, for those of you that perhaps did not take it, or those of you that did take it and maybe just need their memory brushed off a little bit, was conducted at the end of the year last year. This is actually the fourth survey that we have conducted of residents and citizens across Calcasieu Parish, starting in 2018, with a little bit of a break around COVID. And so this allows for folks to provide feedback in real time, but year to year as well, as they get to reflect on the work that the parish has done in the preceding year, and they also look to the future and express their ideas, hopes, joys, expectations for that next year looking forward.
And what do we do with the results once we get them all tabulated?
Yeah, so each of these results are presented to parish leadership as well as elected officials, and then they're ultimately used to inform the strategic plan that sets the guiding direction and vision for the parish in the coming years.
This is the Parish Podcast. We are visiting with Robyn Stiles, Dr. Robyn Stiles of our Emergent Method. That is our consultant that helps us on many things, including our strategic planning and on the citizen survey. Tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into doing things like this.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you just shared, so I'm part of a consulting firm called Emergent Method. We're based right here in the state in Baton Rouge. I've been with the firm for about 6 years, but we have the pleasure of working with a variety of state and local governments. So that's everything from Calcasieu to departments in Baton Rouge that work with the state as a whole. We also do a lot of public sector consulting more broadly and also work in higher education. So my background is I just love numbers. I love numbers, I love measurement, I love metrics, and my background was a PhD from LSU, really in measurement and thinking about how to measure responses and people's opinions about a wide variety of topics. And so when I joined the firm, that was really my focus, building out ways that we could better capture how people feel about a variety of topics and then use that to make very smart decisions for organizations.
Well, let's get to your specialty then. Let's talk about some of the numbers. How many survey responses did we have, and where did those people come from?
Yeah, so we are so blessed this year to report that we saw a 58% increase in the number of respondents to the survey between even just last year and this year. So this is the single largest batch of responses that we have ever seen when fielding the survey. So again, I really want to thank everybody that took the time to complete a survey. Please know that your voice is heard, and we are grateful to have your response. We're also seeing a little bit of a decrease in the respondents from Lake Charles. So generally speaking, the respondents mirror the population distribution across the parish, but we're seeing a little bit of an uptick in responses from all of those areas outside of the city of Lake Charles proper, which is great.
Who are the people that responded demographically and where they live and that sort of thing?
Yep. So there will be no surprise to hear this, but we have a lot of long-term residents of the parish who are invested in the future of the parish and who thankfully take the time to respond to our surveys. We see a lot of folks, that the actual majority, who have lived in the parish for 30 years or more. Linked to that, the majority of our respondents are employed, but we also have about a third of those who are retired who take the time to respond. You know, that's partially because they've been around for a little bit longer. They have that longer term perspective, which we're grateful to capture, but it's also because they have a little bit more time to be able to respond to things like citizen surveys.
A lot of people that are sort of invested in the area. They've lived here a long time. They maybe own property, businesses, those types of things. Seems to be the type who respond. Let's get into some of the questions. Let's go to the satisfaction with Calcasieu Parish Police Jury Services. What departments and services that we do scored well, and how did we do all in general?
Yep, absolutely. So this is a question that we ask year over year just to better understand how citizens are thinking about the services that they receive. And so we provide a list of the services. We 9 different areas that are served through the CPPJ, and then we ask folks to rate their satisfaction with those services on a scale of 1 to 5. Basically, how satisfied are you, from a completely satisfied, which would be a 5, to a completely dissatisfied, which would be a 1. And so again, I mentioned that we ask this question year over year, and so what we really take a look at is the year over year change. So are those scores increasing? You always hope that the scores are increasing and that folks are increasingly satisfied with the services that they receive. I'm really pleased to report that this year, of those 9 areas that were measured, 6 of them actually increased year over year between last year and this year. 2 stayed the same, and just 1 decreased. And so this is overall a very, very positive trend around the overall evaluation of satisfaction with the services.
What specific services scored the highest?
Yeah, Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness scored the highest, and that's with a 3.7 on that 1 to 5 scale that I mentioned before. And Facility Management is right behind with a 3.6. So again, really high scores from those areas. We saw a little bit of an evening out when we get into some of the more middling services. While animal services, mosquito control, and human services all increased slightly, as did the special service districts. We saw that the juvenile justice services stayed the same, really consistently.
This is the Parish Podcast. It is a production of the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury's Communications and Media Department. Let's talk about some of the priority areas and the progress and the how we seem to be doing with those priority areas.
Yeah, certainly. So as a little bit of a reminder, I know that maybe a lot of folks have hopefully seen and heard of the previous Calcasieu Parish Police Jury strategic plan, but in that last strategic plan, 6 different areas were identified as real priorities for the parish. And so that includes everything from disaster recovery, litter, drainage, of course, I know that's top of mind for many folks here, but also facilitating parish-wide development, traffic, which I know that we all live and breathe sometimes every day, and then other infrastructure investments. So one of the ways that we gauge how we're doing related to those 6 priority areas that were established a few years ago is we ask, over the last few years, what kind of progress have you seen? Have things worsened? Has there been no change, or have things improved? So a really easy way of folks just providing a little bit of feedback on how the parish is doing in serving those six areas. This year, when we asked that question, we saw that generally speaking, they were perceived to have improved. So especially disaster recovery, litter, drainage, facilitating parish-wide development, all perceived to have slightly improved in the last few years. Traffic and transportation, though, of that 1 to 5 scale, that was a 1.9 average, and other infrastructure was also seen as potentially slightly worsening.
And we track these year over year, and we can look at what was what the scores were, say, in the 2019 survey, and then again last year in 2022. And let's just kind of go over a little bit of what's improving and what sort of stayed the same.
Yeah, so year over year, as we look at the 2022 scores versus the 2023 scores, and again, feedback straight from the residents to the police jury, of those 6 areas, 3 were actually assigned higher average scores than the previous year, and those were related to litter, drainage, and traffic and transportation, while disaster recovery, facilitating parish-wide development, and other infrastructure stayed very stable, so even score. So 3 improved scores year over year, and 3 that stayed the same.
So we get comments, and we get a whole bunch of different types of feedback from the survey on these 6 different areas. What are some of the things in some of these specific areas? Let's start with disaster recovery. What are some of the things that people were saying that you saw frequently about disaster recovery?
Yeah, when we asked about ideas that folks had about how the parish could improve the services, we got a wide variety of ideas that were put forward. And again, we're very grateful for the folks who did take the time to provide those ideas. But I think that when we look at disaster recovery, we know that recovery is a long-term objective for the parish. And so the cleaning of debris, while that's already been in process, but the continued cleaning of debris in a timely manner and the repair of buildings is definitely a priority. And that makes sense, right? When you look and you see the physical damage that's caused by many of these weather events, one of the clearest signs of progress being made in the recovery can be just the fact that debris is no longer in your streets or around your roadways, and the buildings that you're looking at on a regular basis are being repaired to their pre-storm or pre-weather event state.
How about in litter? I know we still have the perception that a lot of it has not been cleaned up from the storms, et cetera. But what were some of the comments that you saw in the litter category?
Yeah, so there is certainly a desire by many of the respondents in the survey for more frequent litter pickups. That can be as a general sentiment, but also a few ideas on where that litter pickup should be concentrated. So they'd like to see a little bit more of a focus on the roadways, the bridges, and the ditches, those public areas that are very visible and can be eyesores. There's also a desire to see more enforcement of litter laws and levying of higher fines against citizens that litter. I think the fact that folks were willing to even go down the word and use the F word, that's fines, by the way, Tom, around this issue is really a statement of the fact that they really care about litter.
Drainage is always an issue. We've had floods, we've had issues with that over the last 10, 15 years. What were some thoughts on the drainage issue?
Yeah, so sort of related to some of the ideas around litter, I mean, litter can exacerbate drainage issues that already exist, right? And so in many ways, some of these ideas are linked, but as you think about the frequency of ditch cleanups, culverts, laterals, and waterway cleanings, those can really make a difference when it comes to those weather events where you're seeing large amounts of water at a single time, where, more active and continued maintenance of those waterways can make a difference when it comes to drainage and potentially flooding or the prevention of flooding. There's also a desire to be a little bit more proactive. So it's not just addressing the litter that's already there, but improving drainage planning, especially around new developments.
Parish-wide development, some thoughts on that from the survey?
Yep, there is a desire. So I know that we already talked about the need to attract certainly new restaurants outside of Mexican restaurants, although Mexican is one of my favorite cuisines personally. But there's a desire to focus on attracting and growing new business, especially local businesses, right? Making sure that the folks in the community are the ones that are at that front door, serving the residents and serving their constituents. There's also a desire to see a little bit more long-term planning efforts and coordination between cities in the parish. And so while that doesn't necessarily fall straight to the parish to coordinate, I think that the citizens' expectations are that there is that coordination between municipalities that happen to be in the same parish.
Traffic and transportation, a lot of road issues.
Yes, so traffic and transportation is one of those loaded topics. I know that people have a lot of strong feelings about traffic for good reason, but many state that roads in the parish are in need of repair. And I think one of the challenges here is that often it is very, very difficult to figure out what what road belongs to the parish versus what road belongs to a particular city, right? And so figuring out who is even responsible for maybe, just hypothetically addressing that pothole that might give you a lot of grief every day in and out, that can be half the battle. But folks, I think, are interested in seeing more repairs to roads in the parish, and then also the addition of additional public transportation options. So they'd like to see more routes and expansion of dates and times for the services related to public transportation.
Other infrastructure is the final area, and everybody was talking about the I-10 bridge. We wish we could make that happen, but it's outside of our control. What are some of the other things they talked about with the other infrastructure category?
Yeah, that other infrastructure category, that ends up being the catch-all, I think, because folks think infrastructure and they think, I don't know if this is the parish responsibility, but I'm going to put this in here anyways because it's something that's top of mind. So certainly the I-10 bridge, but continuing to repair roads and then also addressing the water quality issues across the parish. I mean, water is so foundational to life that I think making sure that there's access to clean water is certainly a priority when we think about infrastructure.
So moving on outside of those categories now, we asked what people thought of the customer service they received from our employees, the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury employees. How did that turn out and how did it compare to averages from the past?
Yeah, so we've asked this question over the last few years, particularly because we're interested in whether there is significant change here. These scores are so incredibly stable, actually astoundingly stable. So even going back to 2019, where that average score on a 1 to 5 scale, where a higher number is better, just to clarify, the average in 2019 was a 3.4. We're saying that that is still very stable. So the average in 2023, when we asked the exact same question, was also a 3.4. So just between neutral to approaching satisfied there.
You mentioned just a moment ago, we were talking about who owns what road and who does the repairs on what road. The next question that we asked is do people know where to go to resolve specific issues? And that's always an ongoing issue similar to what you were talking about.
Yeah, and that, I don't want to go too far down that path, but it can be difficult to just navigate large institutions and figure out who to go to with a challenge or a problem. We see that we're actually seeing an increase in the number of folks who report that they do feel as though they know how to go and navigate to the appropriate entity to get their specific issue solved. That the folks who answered sometimes, right, who might have sort of a passing awareness of that number is going down. And so people are either very affirmatively in the camp of knowing where to go, while there's been also a slight increase in the number of folks who say that they don't know. So I think that serves as an opportunity to do a little bit of public education on just how to interact with the parish government in more effective ways.
This is the Parish Podcast. It is a production of the Communications and Media Department of the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury. And we're speaking with Robyn Stiles about the results of our annual citizen survey that was conducted in December of 2023. Robyn, one of the interesting bits of data is on whether residents and how and if residents would recommend Calcasieu as a place to live. We had a big drop in that between 2019 and 2022, most likely related to the hurricanes and other events that were going on. Recovered a bit in 2023. Talk about that issue and how people responded to that.
Yep, and while we did see a very large decrease in the folks, so we asked the question as a scale of likelihood of recommending Calcasieu as a place to live. So are you very unlikely all the way to very likely? And when we look at these scores, 2019 was a very different time than certainly 2023 and certainly 2024. When we asked that question then, so again, approaching 5 years ago, the answer was that 71.7, so basically 72%, or roughly 3 out of 4 folks who were asked said that they were likely or very likely to recommend Calcasieu Parish as a place to live. In 2022, when we asked that same question, again, thinking about the weather events, the hurricanes, many of the other issues that were at play there, that number dropped to 41.2%. So that was almost a 30% drop in the folks who said that they were likely or very likely to recommend Calcasieu. In just 1 year, we saw an increase of 8.23%, and so just under 50%, so 49.5%, or basically 1 out of 2 people say that they would be likely or very likely to recommend the parish. And so we are seeing a really steep increase in the number of folks who are answering affirmatively, which is a positive sign, especially coming out of that dip after kind of the 2020 to 2022 period.
We had some specific comments that were frequently talked about. What are some of those that came out of the survey?
Yeah, many of those were reiterations of many of the comments that were already shared previously. But I think that there is an interest in seeing improvements in the service and the priority areas related to litter and debris cleanup. And so again, very visible sign of the storm, very visible sign of the weather events. And so even focusing on that debris cleanup, whether it's litter or actual debris from the storms, can make a big difference in frankly, the visuals of disaster recovery. There's also an interest in seeing addressing the cost of living in the parish. And unfortunately, I mean, as you and many of the folks listening to this know, it's not that the cost of living has just gone up in Calcasieu Parish. This is a larger national issue, certainly statewide and national. But I think that the folks are very aware of those changes to cost of living and want to make sure that Calcasieu Parish is still a very affordable place to live. I particularly appreciated that quite a few folks, over 40, took the time to share that they believed the parish was doing really good work and believe that it is supporting its citizens well. And so there's certainly a desire, even in that sentiment that I shared earlier when we got started, that there's this desire to continue the parish work and to continue to see the parish grow and really flourish as we look to the future.
Any other topics that we haven't gotten into that really need to get some mention? You presented this to the police jury on March the 7th at a special Ways and Means Committee meeting, and we will have all of this available. It is available now on the parish website at calcasieu.gov/citizen survey. Anything, Robyn?
Nope, that's it. Thank you again for allowing me the time.
Oh, outstanding. We're very delighted that you were able to sit down and talk about the citizen survey with us. Robyn Stiles with Emergent Method, our guest. This has been the Parish Podcast. I'm Tom Hafer, the Communications and Media Director for the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury, thanking everyone who listened to this one and saying so long.